Welcome or welcome back to my channel. My name is Noelle, aka MakeupEsquire, and today we talk all about Tanseido brushes. If you didn't already know, Tanseido recently announced that they will be increasing their prices coming up on April 1st of 2025. So I wanted to share what my top favorite Tanseido brush recommendations are. So I went ahead and did that in this video, and I also towards the end talked about which brushes I would not necessarily recommend. Also did a full face of Clé de Peau Beauty. So I talk about some of the Clé de Peau products that I use to achieve this look. And yeah, I hope you stick around. Let's talk Tanseido today. Tanseido is a brand of fude or Japanese handmade makeup brushes. And there's gonna be a price increase coming up on April 1st. It doesn't surprise me given the fact that we have been seeing price increases from other fude brands in recent times. So it was inevitable that they would follow eventually. So today I wanted to chat about some of my favorites. And I have a good amount of Tanseido brushes. We can also chat about Clé de Peau. If any of you on here aren't really interested in Tanseido, I did a full face of Clé de Peau today. So I can showcase the products that I used to achieve this look and which brushes I used to achieve these results as well. For my Tanseido brushes, I'm gonna try to show you all of the Tanseido brushes I have. So I have a lot in this little box here. As you can see, there's all different hair types and styles of brushes, but I also have more here in my brush holders. These other non-Tanseido brushes are just brushes that I have handy to complete an eye look if I don't necessarily have the perfect Tanseido brush to use. And I just did wash my brushes for y'all, so all of these brushes are pretty much clean, but I did just get done using a few of them. So I would love to know if anybody is a fan of Tanseido and what your favorites are. Tanseido tends to use code essentially when naming their brushes, so it's not that easy to remember the exact names for me personally, unless they're written on the handle, which that is something that I appreciate about Fude Bobo, is that in general, she does put the name of the exact brush on the handle. So that is a big perk about ordering Tanseido from Fude Bobo as opposed to other retailers that sell Tanseido. If you're like me, it's just difficult to memorize all the different names of the brushes. If you're a collector like me, like this one, for instance, is a WS14. This one here is a KQ12S, which is my favorite Tanseido brush of all time. And I was asked what my top 5 favorite Tanseido brushes are, because I recently did do a short using Tanseido brushes, a full face of Tanseido. So somebody in the comments asked me what my top 5 favorite Tanseido brushes would be if I had to choose. And I do think I was able to come up with my top 5 Tanseido brushes for y'all. Sylvia on here is not a fan of Tanseido, but Sylvia has shared with me that her favorite Tanseido brush is the WS17, which I agree is a really great one. So after a whole week of using Bloom, I can truly say it's not a need. Oh, interesting, Peach. Thanks for sharing that. Yeah, you did pick up the Natasha Denona Bloom palette, right? Is it as coppery and warm as it looks in the photos? On the Fude Bobo website, she has some Gold Series Tanseido brushes, and this is an example of one of them, and it is very small in size and the handle is really small. So I don't know why this Gold Series is as tiny as it is. I will say that I suppose it is good for travel if you are looking just for really small brushes that don't take up a lot of room in your makeup bag. That I will say is a good thing when it comes to these, but yes, they're so small that I almost am worried that I'm going to lose them. Let's chat about my top favorite Tanseido brushes. You can find all of these pretty much on the Fude Bobo website. Okay, so you see how this, I think it's White Pine Squirrel. Luckily, these have the names of the brushes written on them. So again, this baby version I really enjoy. It's the CC15, and then there's a bigger one that's the CC20, but I don't know if these are still in stock because this is a more, I guess, bougie type of hair, and I don't think that these are always in stock. But other than these, my other tops, and then of course y'all won't be surprised, that I'm gonna be, of course, including my KQ12S, which if you are not new to my channel, you probably already know that I'm pretty obsessed with the KQ12S brush from Tanseido. I have multiple KQ12Ss in my collection because I just don't want to ever be without the KQ12S. One of the things that I appreciate about Tanseido that I also find really interesting is they make the same brush shape in different bristle types. So for instance, all of these right here are versions of the KQ12S. So these two over here are both Kolinsky. As you can see, I purchased this one on Fude Bobo's website, which is why the name is engraved on the handle. And on this brush, it doesn't have the name engraved on the handle because I must have picked it up from like Fude Beauty or something. But since I realized that Fude Bobo was engraving hers, I've been trying to pick them up when I can, just so I can refer to them when I'm doing my makeup. As you can see here, it's kind of like a flat shader brush. I really love the Kolinsky version because it's just razor sharp. I really adore the way that this KQ12S is bundled. I think it's very unique. I haven't seen any other brush maker achieve such a sharp way of bundling this Kolinsky. It's tapered along the sides into this very precise tip, but it's still a dome shape. So it allows you to do so many different things with it. I can't even express how useful it is. Like I said, I were to only have one Tanseido brush for the rest of my life, it would be the KQ12S. I use it every single day in every single makeup look, either on or off camera. I love it to carve out my eyebrows. I love it to get a precise, sharp wing here. If you struggle with your wing liner, it's super easy to just go in with a powder eyeshadow and a precise brush. Like this is a really precise Tanseido brush too, that you could just use to do this like little flick motion with eyeshadow, and then just take your KQ12S and just clean up on the bottom and you look like a professional at doing wing liner, and it'll take you 5 seconds. So that's what I really appreciate about this KQ12S brush. And then it's just really cool how it comes in this tea dyed goat hair, which the tea dye just adds a little bit more resilience to regular undyed goat hair. And then it also comes in this very unique hair mix. I can't think of what exactly this hair mix is, but I remember when I saw it, I was quite impressed because I usually don't see it on the market. It has, I think, some weasel in there, or Kolinsky. Kolinsky is a type of weasel. It's just a higher grade of weasel. And then it's mixed with, I think, like pine squirrel hair, if I'm not mistaken. I'm pretty sure it's pine squirrel and weasel, but it has this really cool like snap to it, if you can hear. Pretty cool. We're talking about our favorite Tanseido brushes ahead of the price increase, since these brushes are expected to at least double in price coming up on April 1st. So I was able to achieve this makeup look using all Tanseido brushes, and I also did a full face of Clé de Peau. Let's talk about the steps that I did with the corresponding brushes that I recommended for the particular makeup steps that I did. So just real quick, wrapping up my top 5 favorites though. These are the top 5 that I would choose. The only caveat is I'm not sure if this one's still in stock. So if this one's still in stock, then I highly recommend you grab it. But it is, I will say, more of maybe like a collector's type of brush, just because it is up there in price given how unique and how jam-packed these bristles are. My understanding is that it's getting just harder and harder to source certain bristle types, which is why you see a range in the price when it comes to the different bristle types. But I do appreciate the fact that with Tanseido, you can choose whether you want a longer handle or a shorter handle. Personally, I prefer having a longer handle when I do have the opportunity to grab a longer handle brush over a shorter handle brush. And I will also add that Tanseido gives you the option of picking the color of your handle. So if you can see in the title where I put Tanseido, I put blue, black, red, and white hearts. And that's because you get the choice of choosing between the blue handle, the red handle, and the black handle. And then they all have white writing on them. So other than this gold series here that has this gold ferrule, which I personally love a gold ferrule. I'm just more of a gold person than a silver tone person. So that's another reason why I was intrigued by the gold handle series brushes, but most of them are just silver. Speaking of shimmers, that's another way that I love another use for the Tanseido KQ12S brush. This brush is really great for packing on shimmer eyeshadow on the lid. So it just has such a special way of holding onto product given the way that it's tightly bundled but still super thin. I love using this KQ12S to sharpen up lines in general. And one way that I use it daily is to sharpen up my lip line. So, especially because I do my makeup in a rush before work, I don't always have the time to be super precise about my lines, but it really is not a concern when you know you have this little workhorse next to you. And like I said, even for this powder wing I have going on, what I used on my eyes was this Clé de Peau eyeshadow quad here. I forget the name of it, and because it's refillable packaging, it's not, I can't see what shade range it is. I'll link everything on my LTK that I used for this look after church. I took this brown eyeshadow here and I just took a very precise brush like this one and I just flicked out this wing right here. And then I just took the KQ12S and then just cleaned up underneath with a little bit of concealer. And so that's how I was able to achieve this wing. The Clé de Peau eyeshadows are really elegant. They have a way of sitting really nicely on eyelid wrinkles and they don't emphasize wrinkles. So you can see kind of up close what it looks like. But that's all I used on my eyes. I went in first with this, I think it's White Pine Squirrel. It's the CC15. The KQ15 is Kalinsky. Oh, okay. It's coming back to me, I think. Yeah, anyway, I took this dome brush here and initially did a crease, like a wash of the more like bronzy shade in the quad in my crease. So I took this one right here and hit the crease. And then I really love this flat lay down brush here, which I took and used this like pinky, more glittery shade and packed it on the eyelid using this one. It's a similar look that I did in the reel that I posted using Tanseido. So I talked about how these are both similar and can be used for similar tasks. I don't know what the name of the red one is, but it's similar to the KQ15, which is the one that Cindy's asking about. And in fact, Cindy, I think this one's the KQ12 because look, sometimes I've gotten some repeats. I am not a double, like a backup type of person when it comes to Fude brushes. I only get backups if it's a brush that I really love and I never want to be without it, or it's like super unique in the market, which is why I was able to justify getting not only one, but two backups of the KQ12S. This one here is the KQ12. So I do think that the red one is the same, is the KQ12 as well. This one is just more flat, but the KQ15 is similar, but it's not as flat. So the ferrule is thicker and it has more bristles in there, so it'll provide more body. And the way I like to use the KQ15 is for concealer. So if you're trying to decide on a concealer brush to use from Tanseido, and if you're trying to decide between the KQ12 and the KQ15, I would go with the KQ15 because the KQ15 is just able to apply concealer better in my opinion, since it does have more bristles in their pack, but you'll also probably see that reflected in the price given the fact that it does have more bristles jam-packed in that ferrule there. So it is a good one for concealer application actually. I do really like it for that. I was actually surprised. I just realized like yesterday when I was prepping for this video that I have two of the KQ15s. But I will say that I'm not that mad about it because these brushes are hand bundled. You'll oftentimes see differences that do in effect make the brush work differently. So if you can see here, this is the KQ15 is amazing for concealer. I completely agree, Cindy. Yeah, this one's great. This one would be my pick for concealer among all Tanseido brushes, this KQ15. But look at how interesting it is that both of these are purchased from the Fude Bobo website. And you can tell by seeing right there that it says BO. That's how Bobo distinguishes that it's hers. And do you see how there's a difference in the way that this brush is bundled? They were both in brush guards like yesterday. So they should already, like, I don't think that it's due to the brush guard. So one of my KQ15s is more narrow. And even though the ferrule is the same measurements, it's just how the pairs ended up blooming. And this one here ended up blooming a little bit more, so it's a little bit whiter. So I do think that that slightly affects the application. So it's just interesting, isn't it? It's backup worthy. I agree, Cindy. If you're looking for a good concealer Kolinsky brush, this one is really good. So thank you for making me feel better about accidentally picking up a backup in this one, Cindy. I appreciate that. And Cindy's the queen of Kolinsky. So for her to really put her stamp of approval on these says a lot, because Cindy has so many wonderful Kolinsky brushes by Takeda, who makes like really like the best Kolinsky brushes out there, in my opinion. So for you to say that this KQ15 is backup worthy, that says a lot. Thank you for that input. Yeah, they can come out differently. They're sisters, not twins. So true. So I'm not mad at the fact that I have two of these. And if you can see, my particular preference usually is to go with the blue handles. There are some handles that I have gone and chosen red. And I think it's just because, to me, I wanted to distinguish between my red squirrel hair. And I just think that it's just beautiful up against the red in the red squirrel hairs. Interestingly enough, I have this one that's a red gradient brush, and this is a tea-dyed goat hair. I have seen that Tanseido has made this one available in the past in aged Kolinsky. I'm jealous. I would love to own that one, but I don't. But this one's great for like all over powder. If you are one to use, let me grab my Guerlain Meteorites. If you have Guerlain Meteorites, I don't know why, but whenever I see this brush, I think, oh my gosh, that's perfect for Guerlain Meteorites. It's because of this round ferrule, and it's still super soft. So you can see there the indents of the little balls. But I didn't do a finishing powder, so I can just do this step. I would like using this one for this step. I am a combo to oily skin girly though, so if I can choose goat over like squirrel, I probably will. If you have sensitive skin, then I would recommend the round ferrule squirrel one. These bristles are just so soft. It will pick up less product, but it's definitely such a luxurious feel and experience when you use these red squirrel hair bristles. Like, it's just gliding across my skin, not disrupting anything I have underneath. So I love going in for my more rounded ferrule brushes in general when I'm going into my Guerlain Meteorites powder. Is the tea dyed softer than the undyed? No, Cindy, good question. Thanks for asking. The undyed goat hair is still softer. The tea dyed gives it a little bit more texture. That's not always a bad thing though, because if you were to want to use more creamy products, or for instance, the Danessa Myricks pomades, you know, those Blooming Romance and then the Groundworks palettes that have those pomade formulas, I would probably prefer to use more of the tea dyed goat for those. So it just kind of depends what you're going to be using it for, which is why I like the fact that Tanseido gives you options. But I'm really impressed with the quality of the Saikoho goat hair bristles that Tanseido provides. Some people don't like Tanseido because they do tend to have airy bundling. That's just like their style. I personally don't mind that, and I oftentimes prefer that to more dense brushes, just depending on what I'm using and the application that I'm looking for. I personally have a lot of highly pigmented blushes, so that's where I would prefer to grab a more airy powder brush as opposed to a more dense powder brush to apply more airy applications. And by the way, if anybody is curious as to how my CO2 Coolpeel laser results are, this is the progress. So today is Sunday. I got my CO2 Coolpeel laser done last Friday. So now we are 10 days out from having the procedure done. All of the scabbing is pretty much gone from my face, but I do still have residual scabbing on my neck. If you can see, I'll kind of stand up for you since the comments might be covering it up. But I will say that as the scabbing is flaking off, it's itchy. So last night and the night before, I was kind of finding myself, if I like woke up at night, to be just kind of like itching it. So it's just part of the process, but it doesn't look too bad. I don't have anything on top of it covering it up or anything like that. So I just wanted to add that as a caveat. If any of y'all on here are following my CO2 Coolpeel laser journey. Going back to my other top favorites, I was saying that I really love the Saikoho goat hair that Tanseido uses, and these would also be in my top 5. I find that this pointy hair Saikoho goat hair brush is useful for so many things, but I will say that it's not that unique in the market. Hakuhodo has brushes that are this shape, and they might be packed with more bristles if that's your preference. So if you already have a similar brush like this in your collection, you might not feel the need to pick this one up from Tanseido. But the reason I love this candle shape one so much is because of how useful it is. So this is a good shape to take with you for traveling or on the go, because if I were in a pinch and I really wanted to use it for powder bronzer, technically you could, but I think it's better suited for something more precise like powder contour. You could get away with using it for powder blush. I also love to use this one for my powder highlight. You can also use it for under eye setting. So it's super soft, so you can just use it to powder underneath your eyes. And if you're not normally one to use powders, or not a lot of powders because maybe you have more dry skin, then this airiness in this brush is probably something that you would prefer over a more densely packed brush. If I were to choose, even though you pay more for squirrel hair, and I will say Tanseido's squirrel hair is really nice and soft and high quality, I typically tend to prefer goat too, just because I do have more of an oily skin type. But let me tell you, like when I was on Accutane, I might have said the softer the better, because my skin was so sensitive. So I can relate to those that have sensitive skin. Another thing to note is right after I got my Coolpeel laser done and I was able to start using makeup on the 3rd day, my skin was still very sensitive. And I do have that video up both here on my Instagram, and I did just upload it to my YouTube channel. So if y'all haven't caught that video, you can catch it. I think it's still in my stories. I did my makeup on the 3rd day after getting my laser done, and my skin was very sensitive. So even squirrel and goat hair mix, that one brush by Sonia G in the Voyage set, the big one, was pokey on my skin right after I got my treatment. So I can understand if that brush is pokey on anybody that has sensitive skin, just because my skin was extra sensitive during that time. Even if you do have sensitive skin, I don't think you can go wrong with the Saikoho goat hair from Tanseido, because it's very soft. It's super, super nice as far as the quality goes. I would, if I had more sensitive skin, maybe stay away from the lower grade of goat that Tanseido provides. Goat hair version, you can kind of probably tell the difference between the grades of goat hair. So the hairs are just more textured because they're thicker and more wavy, but this is a foundation brush. So that's why Tanseido made this brush purposely with these particular bristles because they're more resilient and still, I will say, really soft. Like, I don't feel this to be pokey, but then again, I don't have sensitive skin. And now that I'm recovered from my laser, it's not as sensitive. I wouldn't say that they were stingy in this brush. They definitely provide more bristles in this round shape brush than in the flat ferrule. I did mention that these two are in my top 5 because I love how this one, so I talked about how dynamic this candle shape brush is. This one is also very dynamic. I used this one today to apply powder bronzer. So I went in with the Clé de Peau powder bronzer and I just kind of mixed both of the shades. And I love the curved 3D shape. I love how it allows for a more surface area where you're able to pick up more product and then just kind of disperse it in a way where if you have a higher concentration, let's say of product right here at the closer to the belly or to the base, these longer bristles here help you to kind of just blend it out. It's kind of hard to explain, but like if I were to take a little bit of this powder bronzer closer to the belly, I'll have a higher concentration of the powder. And then if I were to swipe like this, you can see that the longer bristles are following. If I turn it horizontally, and help it blend itself out. So that's kind of why I just truly enjoy this 3D shape brush here like this. It also helps you get into like the smaller areas like this by your brow or up here by your hairline. That's how I went in and used this particular brush today. And then I also love using this brush for powder blush as well. I love the airiness of it. Again, like I said, if you're working with a highly pigmented powder blush, that's where I would prefer more airy bundled brushes. Like I said, of all the different types of eyeshadow brushes that Tanseido makes, still in choosing my top 5 for today, I really love just the regular undyed Saikoho. It's just, I do respect Tanseido for trying to give us options and trying to be innovative when it comes to different hair types. If I were to recommend any undyed goat hair bristles from Tanseido, I would recommend starting out with, like I said, you could probably skip this one, especially if you're a collector of Fude, because if you have a similar one by Hakuhodo, probably don't need this one. This one is great, especially like considering the fact that Sylvia says she likes the WS17, even though she's not a fan of Tanseido in general, which Sylvia, I still appreciate you being here, by the way, even though you're not a fan of Tanseido. And same for anybody else that's not a fan of Tanseido but is still watching my live. I see you. This one would be a great one. I don't think you'd be disappointed in this one, Keisha, if you're looking to try out an undyed goat hair brush from Tanseido. But also these. I do believe you can buy these in a trio. I wouldn't say this one is anything to like write home about. It is unique, but let's say, for instance, if you have the similar version from, I don't know why I'm blanking right now, Koyomo, this brand here, that has aged undyed goat hair. I could see why you would say that about some of the Tanseido brushes, but these ones right here are really, really soft. I don't see how anybody would be sensitive when it comes to these. So if you're looking to try some undyed goat hair from Tanseido out, I would recommend trying these. And these are unique enough. I'm not gonna say there's like super groundbreaking shapes, but I just find that there's something about the way that they're bundled. Koyomo, that's the brand I'm thinking of. Koyomo makes a similar shape to this Tanseido one here. So if you have the Koyomo version, you don't need this one. I really appreciate these two little guys here as lay down brushes. They have a really nice way. It's something to do with the way that the hairs are bundled and tapered and how flat they were still able to keep the brushes. Like I said, when I went in with the sparkly pink shade right here, the way that they just like lay down product, even with matte formulas, are really nice. But you don't have to get the trio. I think you can buy the trio of these 3 all together, but you don't have to get the trio. You should be able to purchase these separately. I really enjoy this really little one though. For very precise detail work, it's great. I use this today for my brow bone highlight, for my inner corner highlight, and I use this for a little bit of pinpoint highlighting on the tip of my nose and along the bridge of my nose as well. I like this one for cream contour. And this is another one that I accidentally got a double of. I don't know how I ended up with 2, but one is a longer handle and one is a shorter handle, and one is blue and one is red. So the Koyomo brushes, if anybody is interested, are aged goat hair. What's interesting about Koyomo and why they're so pricey is because they're aged, and because supposedly this brush, for instance, feels like it's Saikoho, but I think it's just Saikoho. But the reason it feels like a higher grade of goat hair is because it's aged. So just to be clear too, when I say aged bristles, I mean goats that lived a long time ago. And this is the best way I can explain it. The goat hairs were able to be sourced back in the day. I don't know how many decades ago. But back then, hair bristles were just known to be softer. And I guess over time, animals have now not have had the same quality and softness to their hair. I don't know why that's happened over time. But we're not talking aged like we talk aged cheese. Like, you can't take like a brush like this and then in 30 years think that it's softer. Like, that's not what I'm talking about. I don't know if that might have been obvious, but just in case it's not obvious, because I was explaining that to a certain someone the other day and there was some confusion about what I meant when it came to aged bristles. And why they're so much more expensive is because the idea is that once they're gone, they're gone. You're not able to get aged goat hair bristles anymore. It's the type of brush that I have on display in its own little container like this. It's arguably too much to spend on a single brush. So unless you're like really into collecting, you don't need Koyomo. But I do find that they're unique in the sense that they feel like creamy. There's something about the aged bristles. There's something special. It's almost like I was mentioning in my YouTube video earlier, it's like being into wines. Like, you start to get like an acquired palate, and then if you're not like a connoisseur when it comes to like wine, you might not even be able to tell the difference between a higher quality wine than a lower quality wine. That's kind of the way I feel about like red squirrel hair. Like, you don't need squirrel unless you're like a nerdy fude brush collector, because to you it probably won't really appreciate the slight differences in the grades. Koyomo has another one that's not this particular shape. I paid more because of the handle on this one, but you can get this same shape with like not as fancy of a handle and it will cost you less. But I wanted at least one eye brush with this beautiful handle. I will say that there are a couple things about it that I don't absolutely love, like the fact that it's lightweight and just more lightweight than I would have wanted or expected. I also don't like that it has this like this R right here. Do you see that? It's like they're trying to like say that they have like the trademark for it or whatever. And I just didn't think that that was necessary. I think I've seen somebody actually black that part out with like a Sharpie or something. I don't know. Y'all tell me if you think I should do that. This one Keisha said she really enjoys. I like it for cream contour. It's that tea dyed hair though, so see, it's polarizing. We have people in the chat that are fans of this tea dyed goat hair and some that aren't. It's all just a matter of preference. You kind of just have to feel it to know, you know, you have to just experience it. So if you're not really sure if you're gonna like it or not, maybe now's the time to pick yourself up one to just kind of test it out. You might be pleasantly surprised, but maybe it's not your cup of tea. But before the price increase, it won't hurt as much as if you wait until the 1st of April where the prices are expected to go up. And I personally, unless Bobo comes out and surprises us with like a particularly unique Tanseido collaboration, I feel like I'm good on Tanseido. I don't need like these here. This was surprising to me when she came out with this type of hair in the Tanseido brush line, because I didn't have any other Tanseido brushes in this type of hair. So no regrets on picking that up. Other Tanseido brushes clearly can be polarizing. Again, when it comes to foundation, if this might not be your cup of tea, actually, is it Ototsuho? It might be Saikoho. This is another one that I appreciate from the Tanseido line. This one I used on my friend Ashley yesterday too when I did her makeup, and I washed all these brushes since too. So I know y'all saw me use some of these brushes on Ashley yesterday. I like this one to evenly spread out the foundation across the skin. And then if we're sticking with Tanseido, I would use this more airy one to just kind of make sure it's all blended and there's no streaks. But this one's a nice one. Although I will say it's not super, super unique because there are a couple other brush makers that make similar Kolinsky brushes like this. Off the top of my head, I can think of Ihodo that has one. Chikuhodo also has one. Even Takeda, I mean, not Takeda. Well, yeah, Takeda probably has one too because they make like even custom Kolinsky brushes. But Hakuhodo has one that is now discontinued, but it resembles this. It reminds me of it. And I was able to purchase it secondhand off of somebody because I really wanted it. But yeah, I really like this Kolinsky one. Just as an example, so I use this for foundation, which is why you can see that it's kind of dirty and gross looking, but I have a microfiber cloth here. And because Kolinsky bristles are just so resilient, well, really Kolinsky in general, even my beloved KQ12S, I love how easily it just cleans right up. See? Nice and clean again. You know these brushes are expensive when Noelle says arguably too much. Yeah, if you're not a collector, you would die if you heard the prices of some of these brushes. Undyed Saikoho. Okay, yeah, it might be, I think you might be right, Keisha. I don't know why I said Ototsuho. I think you're probably right that this one's Undyed Saikoho. I'm sorry again, I apologize. I don't have these brush names handy, but you'll be able to see what grade it is when you look them up on the Fude Bobo website. And thank you so much to everybody who has used my links or who will be using my links to shop on Fude Bobo. I may earn a small commission. It is an affiliate link. It's at no additional cost to you. And as you can see, pretty much all my money goes into my makeup and my makeup brushes that I can now show off for you all. So it just allows me to make more unreasonable decisions and purchases if you shop through my links. So I appreciate you. I will just shout out quickly. The reason that I picked up these was I saw a blog post by Sonia G talk about this one, and it reminds me of the middle brush. I've compared them before, but in Sonia G's trio that she recently released, the Voyage set, she has the middle size brush, the Omoi, that is a very similar shape to these Tanseido ones. It's just that the Omoi is gray squirrel and either gray or blue. I use them interchangeably because they're almost pretty much the same. Sonia G's have a little bit more hairs packed into the ferrule, and that Omoi brush isn't as tapered as this one. I purchased this one after I read on Sonia G's blog post that she likes this one for her powder contour, which I do agree is a pretty good shape for a precise powder contour. But yeah, that's how I like to use this one here. You could also use it for highlighter too. In a pinch, you could also technically get away with using it for blush or like a blush topper. I will say it's a little bit large for like a one and done eyeshadow brush unless you turn it horizontally. Then you can kind of make it work. But it'll be like a very diffused finish. Kat, you like to talk about how I'm obsessed with every brush. Not true. You usually just don't see or hear me talk about the brushes that I would not recommend because I usually just don't pull them out to use them on a daily basis. So this is actually a good example. A lot of these I've never featured on my channel for that same reason, just because I just don't regularly grab for them. And I would not tell you that you need to run out and grab them. So let me see. Among my Tanseido brushes, let's talk about ones that I would not recommend, since now I've talked about my top 5. So you're welcome for that. I had to think long and hard on my top 5. And I just want to do a couple of honorable mentions. So this one's one that I would not recommend, but I appreciate Tanseido for thinking out of the box. Just like I shouted out Tanseido for having thought outside the box when it came to other types of brushes and hair types that they've used, that they could be pretty unique, like these two, right? The fact that they do dye their goat hair with tea. It's a traditional way of dyeing goat hair. It's almost like Bisotto. Bisotto dyes their goat hair too black, like this one. And it just is a way of adding more strength and resilience and body to goat hair. I don't know how this black one is dyed, but it doesn't seem to me like tea is used because it's so black. Look at how cute this little mini version of the large one is. These, I believe, are Fitch right here, these bristles. So it's not the most useful. It's not the most practical. It looks like it was cut, but as we all know, everybody in here who's a Fude lover and fan knows that none of these brushes are ever cut by a machine or otherwise. All of these are hand bundled, and they purposely don't ever cut the bristles so that it could be as soft as it possibly can be at the tips. So the fact that some of these brushes look so sharp as if they are cut by a machine is actually quite incredible. So I appreciate the bundling. I appreciate the fact that they thought outside the box by trying to incorporate Fitch into their brush line. It's nice and soft, but it's a little just too floppy for me. And once you actually use it for foundation, it's kind of hard to wash. The brushes kind of get like dirty, and it's not like Kolinsky where you can just wipe it off on a towel and then keep reusing it. So, I mean, I would personally, now that I just have this, use this to stamp on like cream blush formulas, maybe like the Chanel cream blushes. I would use this brush just because of that nice flat surface on there. This little baby one, Hakuhodo has a similarly shaped brush like this, and I think you can even grab it in a mix of goat and squirrel hair if this tea dyed goat hair is not your cup of tea. But I really do like this particular shape. It's almost like a little finger, but with like a 3D. And I like this to use as an eyeshadow brush to just kind of like pack on eyeshadow. I already mentioned how I thought that this mix of hairs is quite unique. And then these are some other unique hair mixes from Tanseido. These are just like the honorable mentions that I'm adding in at the end. These are dyed weasel. I was curious because I've never seen this like black dyed weasel before. What I would personally use these brushes for, so this blue handle one is the KQ10B. This other one doesn't have a name. I think they might be slightly different, or it might be an accidental duplicate again. The only thing I could see myself using this dyed weasel for is like a cream eyeshadow formula to kind of like just like swipe it on. But you don't need to pick this brush up for that purpose. There's just so many other brushes that I would say you could use that method to apply, like the KQ12S, which I will recommend to every single person, like day in, day out. I stand by the KQ12S so hard. Like I don't know of a comparable brush out there to the KQ12S. We can appreciate these are kind of like a mix of different types of squirrel. I think you have like some pine squirrel in here, or just, I don't know, maybe it's all pine squirrel. I forget. Sometimes like this one, I even forget like what it's mixed with because it's just such a unique mix of bristles that I normally don't see in the market. It's like a mini KQ12S. Like I said, I respect Tanseido for the way that they bundle their brushes and the way that they try to think out of the box, the way that they try to cater to everybody's preferences by providing the option between longer handles and shorter handles. I don't love the look when it comes to the aesthetics of Tanseido brushes. Personally, I'm just not a silver ferrule girl, and out of the three options, black, red, and blue, I just usually pick blue because I like it more than my second choice would probably be the black. I just don't love red, but like I said, I choose red when it's like a red squirrel hair brush, just so I can differentiate between those bougier ones in my collection. But yeah, those are kind of my thoughts. Like there's just some random oddball Tanseido brushes in here that I just think like, this one kind of reminds me of the Sonia G soft cheek brush. It's like a little bit of a smaller version than the soft cheek, but I would say the soft cheek is more practical than this one. I could find ways to use it, but you don't need a lot of these brushes. I'm wrapping this up now. Thank you so much again for joining me on today's live. I hope I didn't disappoint too much by showing up here with my makeup done already, but stay tuned for next week's live where I will show up again barefaced so that we can all do our makeup together. I just really wanted to start putting this content out there for those of you that might be interested in picking up Tanseido ahead of the 4/1 price increase. I really appreciate all the love and support on Instagram and on YouTube. Always. If you have any particular questions or want me to show you any comparisons to other brushes that you might have in your collection, feel free to DM me. I'm always happy to do so. As you can see, I just love talking about food. I'm such a nerd about it. And that's the look, y'all. Please go ahead and like this video, subscribe to my channel, leave me a comment down below, and turn on your notification bell so you know every time I post a new video. I have linked the Fude Bobo link where you can purchase Tanseido brushes down below in my description box. I will also leave the link to the LTK post where I will link all the makeup products that I use to achieve this look as well. So make sure to check out my links. Please join my email list and my Makeup Esquires Facebook group. I would love to have you. Love you, everyone. Bye.